All right, so I'm doing my audio check because YouTube is telling me please try again later, but it's also telling me it's streaming. So we'll see if you can hear me. I think it's working. If you can hear me, give me the thumbs up in the chat so you can. The audio's coming in fine, and then I'll keep going. I can hear you. All right. Thank you, Cindy. We are going to keep going. Okay, so I've been meaning to do this video for quite some time. Since November is when Foundry EOL'd Modo, end-of-line Modo, and I did sort of a somewhat ranty stream, but I think it was fair. And I've been meaning to get back to this, but we immediately had the holidays. I just got super busy with my Sabertooth Productions, my production company, and so here I am now. And I've been getting questions lately, just almost every day, like what's going on with Modo? Are we going to open source Modo? Is there some future for Modo? And so I just need to make a stream and just talk to you guys about this and tell you what I know and give some options for the future of Modo and just kind of see where we're at. I also just want to talk about the Discord for a moment. There's some really good activity going on there and some nice updates and things like that I want to talk about as well. So I'm just going to get the Discord stuff out of the way, and then we'll talk about Modo a little bit. We've got some Sweden in here. We've got Imperfect Link is here. Okay, bunch of people. Okay. I'm going to throw my glasses on so I can see, and I'm going to pop over to the Discord, and we'll just talk about the Discord real quick. So, he's a Modo user, Houdini user. He's been working on a Modo USD to Houdini translator that actually converts the entire shader tree over to Houdini. And he seems to have gotten really far on it. Now he's going to be doing beta. So I think Modo's a really good fit for Houdini people who want a good modeler and also just the ease of at least getting started with basic texturing in the shader tree and then throwing it over to Houdini and doing your Houdini stuff on it. So if you're a Houdini user and a Modo user, check it out. If you've been sort of eyeing Houdini afar like most of us have for the last 20 years, maybe a little intimidated by it. Maybe this is like a help. This will help you, jump into Houdini, the deep end of the pool if you could just get your geometry and textures over there pretty easily. So I wanted to point that out. Mark Maher has been, I'm sure I mispronounced Mark's last name, but he's been doing a cycles for Modo plugin. So first of all, there's this community forum. I'm not sure how many people sort of pass by this channel here. The forum is just a forum. It's just like the old Foundry forum or Luxology forum. It's just a bunch of topics you can all respond to, and they're there forever, which is nice. It's not that chat that just goes away in the channels, which is nice for immediate feedback. So if you sort of skip over community forum, there's a bunch of stuff in here. So Mark's cycles work. He just released something today, coincidentally. So like an alpha 0.2 or beta 0.2. Added in camera navigation, I think, or he's been working on camera navigation. Definitely has object selection and material selection in the viewport. So he's making a ton of progress on this. And I think cycles integration for Modo is really important for whatever future Modo may have. I think being able to talk to Blender is super important. Maybe once Mark is done with this and we all support him on this, we can get a sort of like Blender to Modo bridge or importer exporter that will not only bring in geometry but also work with cycles, so you can really transport assets back and forth between Modo and Blender really easily. Blender is the Blender channel on here. Speaking of Blender, has been doing a lot of activity, of course. I mean, it is Blender after all, but Kelistar, Chemo, and some of these other guys who are coming over to Blender and getting a lot of help from Steve White and Zen and other guys who are over here helping. So if you know Blender people, feel free to invite them to the Discord as well. If they want to help people who translate over who like to use Blender and in conjunction with their other programs. To invite people, you just right click and you do get that and you'll get a link to invite people and just copy the link. Okay, what else do we have? We've got a little more. Let's go back to the discussion forum real quick. I just want to point out a couple of things here. So yeah, community forum. A lot of gaming stuff on here. Like a lot of us just chat about games and stuff. So it's just a good like sort of hangout really. The AI generation talk is also fairly active, of course, and this is gonna, who knows how this is gonna affect our industry. Interesting about this, like I got in a little bit of a Twitter back and forth, not an argument, with just a guy. I think he's the head of NVIDIA's media, and he's been in the industry a long time. He was at SGI and he was at ILM, and I think he's an honest, like, good guy. And I think he was getting annoyed at some of the AI backlash, and it was kind of like saying, "Come on, guys, it's just a tool." And my response was like, "Come on, man, it's like more nuanced than that. It's not just a tool. There's a lot going on here. That it's a little more complicated than that." And he had invited me to, just come to GTC. I live in Santa Clara County, so NVIDIA is just down the road for me, and go to they're going to have some talks about that. So I was going to go until I looked at the pricing for GTC. It's like $1,000 or something just to go like attend like a seminar. So I'm not going to be going to GTC, but I think if they put that online, I'll see if I can link it up here. But anyway, this is, I think, AI content leaks into general discussion on a regular basis. That's fine. It is 3D in general now, but there is an AI specific forum here as well. Jobs and opportunities, like Revo in particular is doing a fantastic job of posting a ton of job opportunities here. Again, this is not just a Modo board anymore. There's people from all kinds of apps here, and so these are all being posted. Although there is still some Modo stuff. There's one from Lululemon. I think that was Modo just recently. And Modo training, I got a shout out to Yukio, who has put up hundreds of like the entire YouTube Modo content. The thing is, it's easier to search here than it is YouTube. So if you're searching for Modo training, if it's on YouTube, it's probably in here because Yukio tracked it down and put it here. So just search here, and just remember to search here, I guess. Like the quick tip stuff for like octane and plasticity and Modo is all here as well, and it's easy to search. Like somebody asked about default scene in Modo just the other day. You just search for it. It's right here. Like, of course, William has a quick tip on it if you want your own default scene. So there's that. Okay, so let me look at my stuff here. Oh, one more thing with Modo content, Taz, and I'll get to this later. Taz being this Taz, Yoshiaki Tazaki. I hope I pronounced your name right, Taz. I'm thinking he just goes by Taz. We always call him Taz. Taz is responsible for most of the modal modeling tools, quite frankly. I'm not sure how many he's done versus Stuart, but this guy has been like the prime force behind Modo modeling for many years, and he's released a number of things on Github. I'll show these later. You can just download them and play with them. There's some kind of cool stuff in there. But let's get back to the main reason everybody's here, and that's this new channel I put up called Modo Open Source. And so let's talk a little bit about Modo and where it's at now, right? So I was going to talk a little bit of Octane, but I'll get back to Octane. So just real quick, the Octane channel. The Octane channel is pretty active as well, and Paul Kinane, who does the Modo plugin, he's really good at answering questions. So if you have Octane questions, come here. And Octane 2024 is currently supported. The really cool new Octane features are in 2025, and eventually in 2026 is where there's some really kind of groundbreaking stuff, I think. So it would be great to continue to get Modo support for Octane, and just be very appreciative of Paul because he's our link to that. So I just wanted to shout out Paul there. But let's talk a little bit about Modo open source now. And I'm going to pop open the chat here just to keep an eye on it. Okay. So, all right. So where's Modo at right now? Let's just go to big screen Greg here. Modo's EOL software. It's end-of-line software. Foundry last November said we're not going to support Modo anymore. We'll just continue out this year of contracts we have for subscribers. That support, I think, is limited to if Modo stops working, they'll fix it. It's not like they're actively fixing bugs or anything in 17 because they're not. They've let go of the entire Modo development team. Some of those guys, I think, on the team were able to find opportunities in other Foundry departments, maybe a Nuke or Mari or something like that. So there's still some Modo people there that have been with Modo for a while, but most of the Modo people are gone. and that's where Modo's at. What they've done is they've released a 10-year license, and that's for, I believe, for people who have were subscribers, and you can just, which I think was nice of them, that we can keep, we can keep using it for another 10 years. After I spoke with their CEO Jody, she also agreed to release a permanent license. This is for Modo users who had permanent licenses sort of before, while they were still offering them, and a lot of us had both. Like I had a permanent license early on, I switched to subscription. My subscriptions ran out. So what I did is I downloaded the permanent license. You can find these all like Modo. We have a discussion forum like Modo questions, and there's some pinned stuff up here about EOL licenses. This is all the links and everything you need for installing the 10-year license or the permanent license are here, and they work. I'm using it, so it works for anybody who downloads them. So they don't phone home to Foundry; they just run locally, and it's a nice way to keep Modo running. So that's where Modo's at, and any sort of future for Modo is really there's sort of three possible futures. One, it's still possible, I think, for Modo to get picked up by another company. And they could probably pick it up for cheap because it's been EOL'd and it doesn't have a lot of value right now. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. That's a possibility, I think, still. If you think about it, there hasn't been a full service, full freight, modeling, rendering, animation, simulation, 3D software package since Modo. Modo's the most recent one. That was 20 years ago, 2004, 2005. And even Softimage XXI was 2000. That was the next most recent one. So if you're, there's a lot of people in the industry today who are in their 20s that are using programs that were out before they were born. And it's sort of turning into a little bit of a Photoshop situation or a Microsoft Word situation where, no matter how many cool new features these programs add, they never can get away from their base. And a lot of people who are trying to like move to Blender are finding this out. Like you can't escape that Blender's 30 years old, and there's like stuff in there that's inescapably 30 years old. So I do think there's an interesting place for a new full-blown 3D animation software. And I think there's definitely a niche for an open source one. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, is there room, before we get into open sourcing Modo and the details, like, is there even room for an open source Modo? I'm going to keep the chat open here so I can feel free to chime in. But I think that there is right now. Blender has shown, obviously, that an open source 3D program can be successful. Now, when Blender was open sourced or purchased by, I think, Ton, 30 years ago or whatever it was, they open sourced it. The idea that it was eventually going to become this juggernaut and compete with the likes of Maya and 3D Studio Max and Houdini and Cinema 4D and things like that, or Lightwave at the time even, was super unlikely. It would have been laughable. And Blender really languished, sort of as the free version if you want to check out 3D for a long time. But eventually something happened and it gathered momentum, and it's obviously doing very well right now. And, so could that happen again? Is there room for another one? Because that's really the question. Because if there's not, why even pursue this, right? And so we have to believe that there's room for a second open source 3D program. And I do think that there is. I think Modo gives an option to people who have a hard time learning Blender, or people who just, quite frankly, don't like using Blender. If you're going to be in this industry, and I've been in this industry, and you could tell by my hair, for 30 years now. And if you don't like the program you're using, it's pretty miserable, right? You need to actually enjoy the program that you use. And if you get in a situation where you're just using like Photoshop, where there's a few alternatives, but it's really you kind of have to have Photoshop because everybody uses Photoshop. If you get into that situation with 3D, it's not a good place to be. Modo has always been enjoyable to use. It's always been very customizable, which I think is super important. And I think I personally think that it has a nice niche in modeling and shading with its modeling features and the shader tree that no other program has. Now, things like simulation, animation, all programs are somewhat similar there. But Modo's modeling paradigm cannot really be replicated on any other 3D platform. They're just too old to do the sort of selections and action centers and fall offs and things that Modo's sort of famous for. And the shader tree, nobody's going to implement, even though something like Substance Painter or Marmoset is super popular and very attractive to people, I don't think you're going to see that in these full-blown 3D programs that have already committed to nodes. So in Modo, you can do either one. But I think some of these features give Modo a space to exist in the open source world or in the free software world. But it's a long road to get there. So let's talk a little bit about that. Well, I guess just a little bit more on that in terms of not just is there room for Modo, why do we want this? Again, why are we here talking? Why are there people watching this? Why have some of the videos I put out gotten thousands of views? It's just people like using Modo. Again, you have to if you're going to be in this industry, you have to enjoy the program, enjoy using the program that you use, and people really enjoy using Modo. It's really good at the things that it's good at. It's really good at them in modeling and shading, people want to continue to use it, and so that's kind of why we're here. The other sort of part of this is it can be catastrophic to some businesses that are built around Modo. Let's say you're a business like mine, like Sabertooth Productions is my production company, where I have clients that I've had for over a decade. I have our entire product lines in Modo. If Modo were to simply stop working, it's no small thing to try and transfer all of those assets over to something like Cinema 4D or Keyshot or Houdini or whatever, Maya, whatever you're going to use in its place. So, there's a really practical reason, for keeping Modo going, and the only way to really keep it going is for it to be open source so programmers can fix things, or if it gets acquired, because in a few months, Foundry's going to be done with it, and if it stops working, it's not going to be fixable. Okay, so let's talk about what has been discussed so far with Modo and open source, and it's remarkably little. It's not a lot. So after Modo was EOL'd, I had told Jody, the CEO of Foundry, that look, I'm going to message you on LinkedIn, and please respond, and I'd like to talk about a few things. And she did. To credit to her, she did. She responded on LinkedIn, and we had a bunch, number of emails and a long Zoom, and I thought she was very reasonable and willing to talk. And one of the topics I brought up was open sourcing Modo. And now she didn't say, yes, we'll do that, no problem. But she didn't shut the door on it either. She's like, okay, we can be open to that idea, but we need to have a really good proposal. And there's two sort of pathways for this. One is to go through what's, let me just go back to the screen. The Academy Software Foundation. Now, this is an open source software foundation. Foundry is a member of the board, and it focuses on open source software for the visual, film industry, right? And so if you look at their projects, and you'll see a bunch of familiar stuff here. We'll see Material X and OpenColor.io and OpenEXR and OpenVDB. These are all parts of the Open Software Foundation. So it's actually quite successful, right? These are things in all programs that we use. And this is the type of stuff that Foundry is familiar with, right? Foundry is a film visual effects software company. That's really what they are. That's one of the reasons Modo never really fit. And honestly, it's one of the reasons I don't think the Academy Software Foundation is the best path to go. I don't know that they would even accept Modo. It's not really in the film industry. They probably already test on Blender. I mean, why split resources when they already have an open source program? In reality, Maya and Houdini are the main players in the visual effects community, the film community, and all of these things like Material X and OpenColor and OpenEXR, OpenVDB. They really want to make sure those work with Maya and Houdini. And I just don't know that. I just don't think that that's probably the best pathway for Modo. The other possibility is that I convert Pixel Fondue to a nonprofit, which it basically is anyway. I don't make profit. Pixel Fund too, you know, I can pay the website fees and things like that. But this is something we do out of labor of love, and this is not a business. But I would have to convert it from like a LLC to a nonprofit, and then they could donate Modo to Pixel Fondue, and write that off for whatever they think Modo is worth, and then we could start from there. I guess there could be a third way as well, as we could start up a whole another like Modo Foundation and see if we can donate there. Like, I'm just not down. I'm just not going to like extend myself to a third company. Like, I have my production company, I have Pixel Fondue. If somebody else wants to take the lead on that and they think that's a better option than Pixel Fondue, I'm not going to like stand in your way. But I think Pixel Fondue is already out there. We have this Discord, we have the channel. It seems like the best fit. But that's something that we should be talking about in the Discord channel, and that's why I put this here, right? So this is the type of stuff we're going to be talking about in this channel. Now, like I said, there's been some discussion, and the discussion is, we need to bring a proposal to Foundry that they will accept, and I don't know what that is exactly, but I think it needs to have a number of things. We need to be able to show we have a number of volunteers, developers who are willing to work on this and fix Modo if it breaks, and look out for the users. I think the prime thing here is we need to show that any sort of open source movement for Modo, any motivation for Foundry to donate this, needs to be to the benefit of the people who use Modo. So the main one being, if Modo breaks, we need to have access to the code to fix it. Now, when I say it breaks, I mean like a Mac OS update comes out and it doesn't launch. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. And maybe it's just one line of code, but there's no way to do that if we don't have access to the code and Foundry's like moved on. So any sort of proposal needs to be in line with like what's best for the users. And so we need to show that there's developers willing to work on it. I don't know that we necessarily need to show that we have a source of funding, that we're not trying to create some behemoth here, but of course funding would help. Now, in terms of funding, this is stuff we need to discuss on the Discord channel, because this is not like none of this is my area of expertise, right? So I've never run an open source software. I'm not a developer. I don't know how to code. I don't do GoFundMe's. I've never charged anything for Pixel Fondue, anything. Like, I don't release like tutorials for pay. I don't release content for pay. I've never taken money. I never wanted to. I don't really like the idea of GoFundMe's where you take people's money and you don't know if you're ever going to be able to deliver. But that's an option, right? So if there's a couple thousand Modo users and you say, okay, let's see if we can, like, everybody's been spending $500 a year for Modo, well, let's throw in $100. Maybe we can get a couple $100,000 to get some developers to spend some serious time on it. That's a possibility. Another possibility is donations. There are companies like NVIDIA that are overflowing with money and maybe would be willing to throw some support behind Modo. Now, a lot of these companies already support Blender, so we're going to have to make, again, an argument why Modo should exist when you already have Blender. Although I don't think the just use Blender argument is a good argument. That's like, I mean, it's like, it's pretty hollow, right? Just use it. Why? Because it's there, because it's free. I mean, there's got to be more to it than that. So again, well, we need to actually articulate these things. If we're going to get donations, or if we're going to be able to get Foundry to say yes to a proposal of open sourcing Modo, we need to be able to articulate this stuff. And so we need to start talking about it, and we can start talking about it on the Discord. Okay. What else? All right. So let's just play a little bit of a hypothetical here, and let me just make sure I'm missing stuff in the chat. Lots of yeses and yeps. Okay. Oh, lagging. Oh, that's not good. Is it still lagging? Laggy? I don't know. Well, if it is, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to keep going. Right. So, Daryl's a developer and would be willing to contribute. So, yeah, I think I've gotten a lot of contacts from developers and users who said they'd be willing to do this. So now we have a place to talk about this. And, let's just move into this hypothetically a little bit. If we get an okay to open source Modo, we need to set up all the infrastructure of an open source software. We need to have people who know how to do pushes and pulls or whatever they are and things like that in order to all the things that go into developing software. We need people to devote their time, and it's really just, it's going to have to be a labor of love. This isn't a business for anybody. This isn't going to be a full-time job for a developer who wants to devote time to this, or testers who want to devote time to this, that kind of thing. It really is going to have to be a labor of love. And yes, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat here. Yeah, I'll get back to that, John. And what's nice is there are a lot of Gen X and even like boomer, sort of retired or near retired Modo users and former Modo users who are maybe financially independent and could probably do something like donate their time to this. And we just have to make a compelling case for that. Once you get the ball rolling, I think there's a space for other developers to come in, because Blender is a very crowded place if you're a developer. The Blender market is very crowded. I think it's hard to get noticed. And if there's a new kid on the block and you're able to create plugins and things like that for Modo, then I think that could be appealing to some other developers. And in terms of what we do with Modo, the main priority is just to keep it running. Like I said, that's the main priority. Like we need to be able to keep Modo running. The sort of tier 2 priority is to improve Modo, right? Now that may be adding new tools and maybe making it faster and maybe making it more stable. Those things have proven hard to do. So the third tier part of Modo is just make a new Modo, right? Just make a new app, make a modern app based on Modo's workflow. And if we have access to the source code, then you can do things like look at Modo's bridge tool and see the algorithms that are at play there. And it'd be much easier to implement that than starting from scratch. It's much easier once we have a template to start with. It'd be much easier than building a 3D program from scratch. Again, that's a massive undertaking. And it's going to depend on people who are willing to just like devote their time to something like that. And, that's what we're going to have to figure out. We're just going to have to take the temperature of this situation in the Discord. And we're going to see if we can get Foundry to do this. And then we're going to have to see if we can do anything with it. So I don't know. Like, I know none of this is super comforting to anybody who's like worried about their company that's really reliant on Modo. And you're like any of this stuff, if we get it to open source, Foundry's on the hook until November. So even if we could get them to say yes prior to November, we wouldn't really be able to start on it. Maybe if we can get them to say yes, we can at least get them to be able to have some developer volunteers look at the code, and some of the former Modo developers look at the code prior to that. But it's a long way off. So none of this is a quick solution to the problem we're in. The other thing I wanted to bring up was, which I think is important, is I do think we kind of need to get the blessing of the original Modo developers, the founders like Stuart Ferguson and Alan Hastings and Brad Peebler, Gregory Duquesne, people like that, Mark Brown, even people who replaced them along the way, like Chris Haig and Matt Cox and some other guys who and there's a bunch of people, right, that have put Taz, have put so much work into Modo over the years, and that's their work on display. I feel like we need to have their blessing, and honestly don't know if we would get it. I have talked to Brad because we're friends back when this happened, and I think Brad would support this for sure. I have not talked to Alan. I have not talked to Stuart about this, and so I don't know what they would say. And so now, if they're not super comfortable with it. I don't know, like I don't know that necessarily closes the door on it because, like I said, people's businesses depend on this working at least until they can transfer to something else. So, you know, if we can get it open sourced, even if it's just to fix it if it breaks, it's a pretty important thing to be able to do, even if some of the founders are like, I don't really want like that code out there. So I'm not saying we would do it. I'm just saying it's a discussion to have. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of all I have, and I know it's not a lot. But at least it's, I think, all out there now, and we've got a channel to talk about this kind of thing, and we're just going to kind of see how serious everybody is. Because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually do it. And I've been doing Pixel Fondue for maybe 8 years now, probably maybe. And alongside running it, like my actual company and doing production work. And, like sometimes when I enjoy Pixel Fondue, so I'll do it. But like I just took 3 months off because I was super busy, to have developers on Modo and they're working on something and they take 3 months off because they have an actual job. I mean, that's a tough thing to do. So we're just going to have to kind of see how serious people are about this. And yeah, like a lot of developers are sort of, chiming in on the chat. Like, yeah, this is not an easy thing. So we're going to bring this discussion into the Discord. Everybody's invited. And if you know developers, even if they're not familiar with Modo, but they like making things, they like these types of projects, or they like exploring things in 3D, invite them in. If you know people who have done open source software before, invite them in. We could use some advice on how to start formulating a proposal and how to set this up. If you know people who might be able to contribute to this, or would know people who can contribute to this in terms of donations, invite them over. And so we'll have to start organizing this. And it can't just be me, right? Like we've got to have some people stepping up and volunteering for this if it's going to happen. Like that's just the reality. And that's kind of where I'll end it, I guess. We'll just kind of see how serious the community is about this endeavor. Yeah, okay. I'm just looking at the chat here now. No lag, some lag. I don't know. Maybe a country thing. If you have any questions, throw them up in the chat, and I will answer them. If not, I will. I was going to show. I'll just keep an eye on chat, but I was going to show a couple of Taz's things. So if you just hide that camera there. I'll post this in the chat. So this is the GitHub with all of Taz's little plugins he's been working on, and I can just show a couple of them really quick. Anybody play this game? Pacific Drive. It's a great game. I just finished it last night. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So, yeah. So he's got. Let me load up that little hippo thing I did. Okay, so this I made with. There's my little open source thing, which let me hide that. Yeah. So this was made with. Taz's like Laplacian Smooth, and his eyes aren't moving with it, but SDS Subdivide, a couple of Steve Hill's like spherized kits. But basically, you got a couple of, I'll just go through these really quickly here. And so if you install the kits from the GitHub, you'll get some buttons up on the kits window here. By the way, if we open source Modo, we're gonna have a better way of getting to kits than like this thing over in the corner. Something like the Maya shelf maybe would be better. He's got some buttons here anyway, but I'll send a config where we put them in the Polygon tab here if you want. But yeah, there's just an open subdivide, so you can do that. It's super fast subdivide. Does the most recent Catmull Clark one. Oh shit, you can't see my screen. Yeah, good point. I gotta do that. Let me undo this. Okay. Thanks, Adventure Films. Yeah. So, well, where was I? Yeah. So this is so Taz has these little kits here, and I'll put the link in the description. I also put it in the chat. But they're just some little projects he's working on. I think things that he would have put in Modo if Modo was still running, but it's not. So we just put them up on Github. And yeah, so they're kind of useful. Like I said, you know, if you have the kits here, there's some buttons he puts over here. But I'll release a config where they just put them in the Polygon side here. So there's an open subdivide one where it's just really fast subdivide, like a Catmull-Clark subdivide. It works as a mesh operation or a command. You've also got this triangulate kit, which is kind of cool. So let me make a new. This one's actually pretty useful. So this new CDT triangulation. So if I have like a curve here, and I just close it, and then I freeze it, like so. If we open source Modo, I'm going to put freeze on right click, by the way. So I'm freezing this into just this polygon right here, right? Now, if I were to triangulate this, it kind of looks like that, right? Kind of sucks. The CDT triangulation will do a better job. You've got two options, constant and conforming. So conforming does this, right? Much better triangulation. And this is also a mesh operation as well. And this also does some nice things for text. So if I do some like text here, and let me just do some text real quick. Like so, pixel fondue. And again, let me freeze this guy. Okay, so if I do like regular triangulation, it's like this. And if I do the CDT triangulation and use the constant mode, you get this. So you get some sort of nice triangulation there for text. So it's just another way of doing it. Yeah, and we've got Laplacian smoothing. So let's just look at that real quick. Let me just load up an asset here. Let's see. Let's look at some meshes. Does anybody know who made this Hippo mesh? Like the original Modo Hippo mesh? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's Andy Brown or who made that. But anyway, we've got this original Hippo mesh here. And the Laplacian smoothing is actually a tool. And it's also a mesh operation. So we'll just do it as a mesh operation here. And so I can just, should be able to hit tab and pop up my list here. And it's, I think, LAP, Laplacian smoothing. And then I'll just do a omni-haul on this. And you can see as it's smoothing how it's sort of nicely just sort of spherizes the thing. It just really quickly, brings all its toes in without overlapping polygons. In fact, let me just turn this off and let's add the open sub D, open subdiv, subdivide one first. Drag this underneath here and subdivide it first and then turn on the smoothing. And this is just how I got the spherical hippo, which I can show in a minute. So if Modo it agrees with me, so it should be. And this is why we need to open source Modo. So this also may be a Modo. So I had a pretty high setting on the smoothing, and then I had a double subdivide. So this may take a second, but at any rate, this is the kind of thing, right? So this is the world we're living in as a Modo user. Is we get this. And there's, even though Foundry's supposed to be on the hook for, support, which you would think would be bug fixes, we're not getting them. And so there's no path forward unless either somebody picks up Modo or we can open source Modo. And so I'll maybe start another Modo here. Maybe this is a nice, ironic way to end this whole live stream, right? Because this is this is where we're at. You know, the spinning ball, the milky scene. Okay, so this was just me having too many polygons. You can see how it did a nice little smooth there. But like, who knows? We've all been there, right? We've all been there with Modo locking up like that with some bug, and like, what do you do? It's like that's when people get nervous and they start thinking, well, I probably better change software because there's no way forward with this. So anyway, there's some like cool little things with Modo that TAS has added, and there's a couple of others. Chris Haig added like a parts fall off, so just regular fall offs, but you have like a part fall off. So I could do like a let's just see if I can do like an array of this guy. So we have some. Now these are all just one mesh, right? These are just polygon islands. And if I do like a scale and I do part fall off, and you can kind of see it looks a little bit like a linear fall off, and I start doing the scale, and it does it per polygon island, which is kind of cool. So nice little tool by Chris, and that is also in the Modo content of the Discord. All this stuff is in the Modo content of the Discord here. So, you know, oh, this one's skeleton one that Taz did. It sort of looks like an interesting sort of offset polygon bevel potential replacement. I don't know if it does, if it like converts the geometry into a solid. Well, it does it. I've got it installed, but it's like super buggy. It'll crash. But there's a bunch of other stuff on here as well. So I think that's about it. How often do they update Modo these days, Nick? Not at all. Like Modo is not being updated. It's again, like I said there at the beginning of the podcast, if it breaks, like stops working, they say they'll fix it, but it is not being updated. So, when it hangs like that, it needs to play elevator music, or there you go, to calm the user. That's a great idea. See, if we open source Modo, we can get it to play elevator music when it goes into La La Land, instead of just turning the screen a nice milky white. Yeah, okay. I've been using Modo for at least 10 years. Okay, Raydream Studio. So yeah, I don't know. There's just a bunch of chat going on now. So sorry about not being able to switching over to my screen. That's me just not doing live streams enough. Yeah, that's right. Like Nick saying, that's sad. I really love Modo. Yeah, that's kind of why we're here, because people really love this program, and there's not a perfect alternative for it. Anything that you switch to kind of seems like a compromise, except when it comes to crashing and speed, then it seems like a huge upgrade, because those are places where Modo needs improvement. And yeah, so all right, so let's take this to the Discord. I'm just going to wrap this up again really quickly. So there's the Modo open source channel on Discord. Feel free to post away. I'll probably post the link to this live stream right here as the first post, and maybe we'll put together a to-do list or something. Check out the Cycles beta for Modo. Help Mark out on that, and you just go to the discussion group here, the discussion forum, and then community forum, and then go to Cycles here. And there, I think he's been putting up some download links for the beta. And you just install that. I've got that in here somewhere, I think. Do I have Cycles in here? Probably. Yeah, that's about it. That was Cycles layout. I think it comes with its own layout. Don't forget to link the Discord server. Oh, yeah. So I should do the invite. I will in the description. That's just an invite. But I'll put a permanent invite in the description. And yeah, don't be shy. Jump on the Discord. That's sort of the hangout now. Invite more people here. The Discord's been growing. It grows every day. I think we've got I don't know, almost 3,000 people on here now. There's less. I think there's like less than 1,000 when like we started like a year ago, or maybe right around 1,000. So the Discord's been doing just fine, and it's a great thing to sort of keep open and have going all day. And the one thing with the Discord is just keep answering questions. Like the whole point of the Pixel Fondue Discord is really to answer questions, whether it's plasticity or Octane or Modo or Houdini or Blender or whatever. I really appreciate the users who go on there and answer questions. That's where I think we want to distinguish ourselves as this Discord is. you know, it's a place where your question is actually going to get answered, and then yeah, all the other stuff, cool stuff that comes with it. Okay, all right, that's it. I think I'm gonna hit the old stop stream now, and I'll catch you guys on the Discord. How much money will Foundry accept to go open source? I don't know that they need to accept money, Marco. It seems weird to pay them to open source software that they're just gonna bin, right? If they come asking, if we bring them a proposal to open source it, and they say, hey, we want X dollars, then we'll bring that to the community and we'll see. But to me, it seems like it should be a donation, and they can determine their own value of Modo, and donate it to a nonprofit, and then write off their donation. That to me seems like a way to pursue this. But if they want money for it, then they're gonna have to tell us what they want. Ball's in their court. The ball is in Foundry's court. Like it's 100% in their court. They're gonna have to. We're gonna have to come with them with a good proposal. Even if we have a fantastic proposal, they still may say, you know what, we just don't want to do it. So we'll see. Okay, thanks guys. I am gonna go now.